Hi there. This video is part of a series that is following my journey to getting published in 2020. Today's topic is writing. I'm going to talk to you today about how I set about writing. I will cover my approach, how I come up with my ideas, how I develop the idea, how I plan, and how I set about writing the first draft. Hopefully, some of the things I cover here might help you also, wherever you are in your creative journey. Hi there. I go by the name The Celtic Storyteller. I am an unpublished writer who's determined to get published this year. I will guarantee this happens by self-publishing a book I'm currently working on. I am also going to continue making submissions for a book that I finished back in 2018. If you would like to know more about me and why I decided to share this journey online, I cover all of that in my introduction video. I am learning as I go along, and I'm very happy to share what I find along the way with you. I just wanted to say a quick thanks to those of you who have subscribed to my YouTube channel so far, and welcome to any new viewers or subscribers. It's really lovely to have you along. So let me tell you my approach to writing. I don't claim to know the best way to write a book. This is how I do it, and any tips or advice are just my opinion. And my first bit of advice is that you know best for your own writing process. Hearing what I do might be helpful, but your way is the best way for you. Now, you should know, when it comes to writing for me, I do like to do things my own way. That is why I've displayed before you 3 Hermit cards. In short, the Hermit card in Tarot represents withdrawing from the distractions of the outer world to focus on an inner quest. The Hermit listens to his or her own voice for answers, not anyone else. Each tarot deck represents the Hermit a little differently, just as each of us who feels like being a hermit sometimes will do this a little differently. Maybe one of these cards appeals to you more than the others, and the picture will give you inspiration to trust your own writing voice. So when I finally committed to writing my first book, I didn't want to be influenced by any formal process around writing. What I mean by this is, I didn't want to join a writer's group or go on a creative writing course. I decided if I was going to write, I would just write what came from me. That I was going to trust that this was going to be fine. I wanted to be creative the way I was creative. I wanted to be imaginative the way I was imaginative. Now don't get me wrong, I'm sure I googled a few how-tos and I use the spell checker and thesaurus all the time. But I personally have way too many insecurities to join a writing class. I am convinced I would end up comparing myself unfavourably to others, that I would find myself doubting my story ideas or my writing style or my characters. I would be afraid that everyone else would set the writing bar so high that I would stop writing altogether. So I do what I have to do to write. That will be different for everyone. I have no doubt that there is a lot you can learn from taking a writing course. This just isn't for me, because I am the hermit. So if I was to give you any advice on writing, it would be to do it your way. Nobody else is just like you. Your ideas and style and the characters you like, the adventures you want them to have, don't have to live up to anybody's standards but yours. And that leads me into how I come up with my ideas. So if you're wondering, what do you write about? The easy answer is, write what you know or what interests you or what is calling out to you to be put on paper. And what steps should you follow? Well, if you want to write a book that follows a standard template for the genre you love, then do that. If you don't know if your book is even definable as a particular genre, but it's the story in your head that wants to come out, then do that. Neither way of writing will necessarily guarantee publication that I know of. People want to read books that follow the template for the genre they love, people want to read books that break new ground, and people want to read books of any variety in between. Here is how I came up with my book ideas. My first book idea was a very slow burn. I knew I wanted to write more than one book and possibly a series of books. I thought about writing romance first because I love romance, and they always say write what you love. The problem with this was that romance novels tend to be set in fantastic locations or around popular and exciting people, and I have no experience of either of these things. Then I stopped trying to think so hard about what the finished book would be about and thought about what sort of characters I wanted in the book and what sort of things I would like them to be involved with. The answers to these questions were easy. I wanted my characters to be less than perfect. I didn't want them to be the beautiful, successful people you see in romance novels. I wanted them to look normal, like me, and make mistakes, like me. That way, I could like them and not be so intimidated by them that I couldn't even imagine their story. And their adventure? Well, among other things, I love science fiction stories, stories about the magical and the mystical and gothic stories. So I decided my imperfect people would have an adventure that involved stretching some scientific facts into scientific fiction. I needed to dismiss the fact that sci-fi is hard to sell, or that my book would fall between two genres, a bit of sci-fi, a bit of adventure. I just knew this was the story I wanted to write. And then I started daydreaming. The daydreaming part for me is when I start to imagine my characters, what they think, what they feel, what they want, who they will meet, who I wanted them to meet, and what I wanted them to do. Out of the flaws I wanted them to show and the lessons I wanted them to learn came the beginnings of a story and plot. Once I know the answers to all the questions I asked, I could see my story appear. Things needed to happen to show the answers to these questions. A number of events, discussions, actions need to take place and in a particular order, which will determine the structure of the story. So take a very simple example. I wanted one of my main characters to have confidence issues and to be a bit of a romantic because I can relate to those character traits and I could probably write that in my sleep. This was sticking to what I know. I wanted her to have an adventure I might like to have because this is fiction and she might as well do stuff that I can't do in the real world. This is writing about stuff I like. I wanted her to have flaws, so I gave her a mistake that she made in her past that the reader wouldn't think was a big deal, but that bothers the character and means she is conflicted with the decisions around one of the main plot elements in the book. This is merging my character flaws and personalities with some adventures, and that creates a story. Next comes a little bit of planning and the actual writing. However, the daydreaming about my characters and the things that happen to them doesn't stop. I use Scrivener, as you probably know, and to start a new book, I would open a new novel template. I will just build a summary of the book first. I create chapters or scenes for the events, discussions and actions I have daydreamed so far. Once those are in, a few other things will become obvious. So in order to get to where one of my actions needs to happen, maybe something else has to happen first. I can also jot down any details from the world building I have done in my head, and I can detail how things I have made up in my head might work. I don't do big character sheets, but I will record names and maybe some of the major personality traits I want them to show, especially if I haven't already imagined a scene where this is apparent. Once this is done, I can start to write the book. When it comes to writing, it is probably different for everyone, and although many of you know how to sit down and write, I will tell you how I do it, in case there is anyone out there who just hits a brick wall when it comes to writing. So when I sit down to write, I'm either filling out one of the scenes or chapter notes I've added in the planning, or I'm following on from something that's already happened. In each instance, I have something to go on. So firstly, I imagine myself as the characters. I think about what they have just done or what they are supposed to do in this scene, and I start writing their actions or words from their point of view. It is never perfect first time around. It takes a few sentences before I get comfortable. I will retype anything that's total rubbish. I soon lose myself in the story and go from thinking hard to writing easily. It will flow sometimes, and other times it can require staring into space for the right word. Sometimes, if I don't know how I should write an action or some speech or a particular plot point, I write down what I know I want to happen and mark it to come back to it later. At the end of a session, if I have the time, I will reread what I wrote. Sometimes this is at the start of the next session. Sometimes I love what I wrote and sometimes I don't. But this is the first rough draft. There is time to fix everything. When it comes to stopping the writing in order to research a topic that you're writing about, for my first book, I stopped to research many but not all of the things I needed to. I also reviewed each scene before moving on to the next, and I reviewed each chapter before moving on to the next. Doing this helped make the first rough draft pretty good and means the first reread is good. On the book I'm writing now, I'm flying through it. Because since December I decided I would publish this book this year, and I've decided that it will be shorter than the first one. I have done everything the same way except for the writing sessions. Now I am finishing a scene and moving to the next. Sometimes I reread it if I'm not sure where I'm going, but mostly I'll go straight to the next one. I haven't corrected any chapters. My rough draft is going to be very rough, and this will create more work in the reviews, but I'm okay with that. It is, of course, up to you how much effort you put into your first draft, and it will depend on your writing style. But this is how I've done it so far, and I hope by stepping through this process it has helped you. I hope you have enjoyed hearing how I go about writing. I know that I'm always curious about how other writers go about their writing, so if you have anything you want to share on how you approach your writing, I'd love to hear about it, so feel free to comment below. Thank you so much for listening, and if following my journey is something that would interest you, I would love if you went ahead and hit the subscribe button below. And a big thank you to those of you who have subscribed to my channel already. I'm going to leave it there for today. In the next video in this series, I'll probably talk about the drafts and editing process, and I'm going to leave it maybe a couple of months because I want to give myself time to go through those number of drafts, probably be up to 4 at least. So when I have that completed and I'm starting my editing, I'll do the next video for you. If you have any creative project on the go, this might be helpful for you as well. So you're welcome to pop by for the next video and see what you can take from it. That's all I have for today's video. Slán go fóill, which is bye for now in Irish. I'm wishing you all the best.